Captain Xar'Vex adjusted his atmospheric stabilizer with a slight tremor of annoyance. These primitive Earth conditions were barely tolerable, even with the most advanced galactic technology. Through his compound eyes, he observed the gathering of human military personnel with what he believed was well-justified skepticism. Recording begins. Standard galactic date 47,299.3 Xar'Vex spoke into his neural recorder. Initial observations of species 7,249, designation humans. These bipedal creatures appear remarkably inadequate for any serious military consideration. Their epidermis is embarrassingly thin, lacking any natural armor. Their muscle density is laughable by galactic standards. And their skeletal structure. Hey, it seems constructed from materials only marginally stronger than their primitive building substances. The doors to the military facility slid open with a hydraulic hiss, and Colonel Alexandra Steele Rodriguez strode through with purposeful steps. Her combat boots echoed against the polished floor, creating a steady rhythm that caught Xar'Vex off guard. There was something in her movement that seemed efficient, almost predatory. "Welcome to Fort Resistance," Captain Xar'Vex Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying the weight of authority that made even the alien observer's antennae twitch. "I trust your journey through our atmosphere wasn't too uncomfortable." Xar'Vex clicked his mandibles in what passed for a diplomatic smile among his species. "Your concern is noted, Colonel Rodriguez, though I must say your species' tolerance for these harsh conditions is surprising. The Galactic Assessment Council has sent me to evaluate your military capabilities, though I confess, initial scans suggest this may be a brief assignment." Rodriguez's lips curved into what humans called a smile, but Xar'Vex's cultural training suggested this particular expression carried additional meaning. "Oh, brief you say? That's fascinating, Captain. I assume you've reviewed our preliminary data package." "Indeed, your species' maximum running speed is barely above that of a juvenile Kraxon. Your lift capacity would make a Zentarian dock worker chortle, and your environmental tolerances." Xar'Vex paused for dramatic effect. "Well, let's just say the Council questions how you survived long enough to develop spaceflight." The Colonel's smile widened, showing teeth, a gesture that Xar'Vex's cultural database flagged as potentially aggressive. "Then I suppose you'll be very interested in tomorrow's demonstration, Captain. We're conducting a little exercise. Nothing too impressive by your galactic standards, I'm sure. Just a 48-hour continuous combat simulation." Xar'Vex's translator must have malfunctioned. 48 hours? Continuous? Surely you mean with multiple teams rotating through the exercise. "Single team, Captain. One of our standard special forces units. They'll be running the full course, all terrains, all conditions, no breaks." Rodriguez checked her watch with casual indifference. "Of course, if you feel this would be a waste of your valuable time." The alien observer's secondary heart skipped a beat. This had to be some sort of diplomatic bluff. His species could barely maintain peak performance for 6 hours, and they were considered among the hardiest in the Galactic Alliance. "I will observe this." "Exercise," Xar'Vex declared, trying to maintain his composure. "Though I must insist on bringing our medical officer, Dr. Xar'Vex. For purely scientific documentation, you understand." "By all means," Rodriguez replied, gesturing toward the facility's interior. "Bring your entire delegation. I wouldn't want anyone to miss this. After all, it's just a simple demonstration of human capabilities. Nothing special." As they walked deeper into the facility, Xar'Vex couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. The way Rodriguez carried herself, the subtle expressions of the human personnel they passed, it all suggested he had gravely miscalculated something. But what could these soft, fragile beings possibly show him that would change the Council's assessment? He would soon find out, and the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Dawn broke over Fort Resistance as Xar'Vex dictated his preliminary assessment to the neural recorder. Update to species 7,249 evaluation. The humans have presented what they call their elite warriors for inspection. My technological scans indicate nothing remarkable about their biological enhancement levels because there are none. These specimens appear to be completely unmodified organics. Dr. Xar'Vex, the delegation's medical officer, waved her sensor wand over Commander Marcus Ghost Thompson as he stood at parade rest. Her facial tentacles writhed in confusion. "Captain, these readings must be incorrect. According to our databases, A being of this muscle mass should not be capable of the performance metrics they claim. Commander Thompson maintained his professional stance, but a slight quirk played at the corner of his mouth. The Special Forces officer wore standard-issue combat fatigues that, to Xar'Vex's horror, provided almost no protection against environmental hazards or energy weapons. "I assure you, the readings are accurate," Colonel Rodriguez interrupted, materializing beside them with that unnervingly silent step of hers. "Commander Thompson and his team hold several records in our combat qualification courses, though I'm sure they're nothing compared to your galactic standards." Xar'Vex's antennae twitched as he observed the rest of Thompson's team assembling on the practice ground. Lieutenant Raj Phoenix Patel was checking his communication gear with methodical precision. Sergeant Victoria Storm. Blackwood adjusted the sights on her rifle with practiced ease, while Private First Class Diego Shadow Ramirez completed his 15th lap around the compound to warm up. They called it. Preposterous, declared High Observer Kryn Tox, the most senior member of the alien delegation. "Our research indicates human beings require something called sleep for nearly 1/3 of their planetary rotation. You expect us to believe they can maintain combat effectiveness for 2 full cycles." Thompson stepped forward, his movement carrying a fluid grace that seemed at odds with human physiological limitations. "With respect, High Observer, we expect you to watch and draw your own conclusions. My team is ready to begin whenever you give the word." Dr. Xar'Vex's medical scanners whirred frantically. "Captain Xar'Vex, their adrenal systems are showing unusual activity patterns, but I detect no combat stimulants or performance enhancers. This makes no logical sense." "The only enhancements we need are coffee and motivation," Sergeant Blackwood commented with a grin that displayed far too many teeth for Xar'Vex's comfort. Colonel Rodriguez consulted her primitive timepiece again. "The exercise begins in 30 minutes. The team will navigate through desert terrain, urban combat scenarios, underwater obstacles, and mountain warfare conditions. They will engage automated defense systems, solve tactical challenges, and maintain full combat readiness throughout the 48-hour period." "And when they fail," Kryn Tox asked, mandibles clicking in barely concealed disdain. If Rodriguez corrected with steel in her voice, "They fail to complete any objective, the exercise ends immediately. But I wouldn't count on that happening, High Observer." Xar'Vex watched as Thompson's team performed their final equipment checks. Their movements were smooth, practiced, almost ritualistic. These humans showed none of the fear or uncertainty that should precede such an obviously impossible task. Instead, they exhibited something far more disturbing. They looked eager to begin. "May I remind you," Xar'Vex said, trying to maintain his diplomatic composure, "that the Galactic Assessment Council requires accurate documentation of species capabilities. Any attempt to mislead our delegation would have severe consequences for Earth's potential membership." Commander Thompson just smiled. "Understood, Captain. We wouldn't want to mislead anyone. That's why we're going to show you exactly what humans can do." The sun climbed higher in the sky as the alien delegation settled into their observation post. None of them realized they were about to witness something that would fundamentally change their understanding of humanity's potential. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Xar'Vex began to worry that his preliminary report might need significant revision. A holographic map materialized above the command center's main console, displaying the vast expanse of Fort Resistance's combat training grounds. Xar'Vex's compound eyes widened as he processed the sheer scale of the facility. The training zone stretched across 50 square kilometers of artificially maintained environments, each section precisely engineered to create the most challenging conditions possible. "As you can see," Colonel Rodriguez explained, gesturing to different sections of the map, "we've created a comprehensive testing ground. The western quarter features our desert environment, maintaining temperatures between 40 and 45 degrees Celsius. The northern section contains our mountain warfare zone, with elevations reaching 3,000 meters. The eastern quarter houses our urban combat simulator, a fully realized city with underground tunnel networks. The southern section? That's where things get interesting." Dr. Xar'Vex's medical scanners hummed constantly as she monitored the human team's vital signs. "Captain, their core temperatures are already elevated from basic warm-up exercises. Surely they cannot." Her observation was cut short by Commander Thompson's voice over the command center speakers. "Ghost team, ready for deployment. All systems check green." The massive entry gate to the training ground rolled open with a thunderous rumble. Thompson's team stood at the starting line, looking impossibly small against the harsh landscape before them. Their first challenge would be a 10-kilometer trek through the desert zone, carrying full combat loads. Exercise begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark Rodriguez's voice rang out through the facility's communication system. Ghost Team moved with startling speed, their formation tight and purposeful as they entered the desert zone. High Observer Crin Tox made a sound of dismissal. They start with such enthusiasm. The real assessment begins when fatigue sets in. Hour 1 brought the first surprise. Instead of showing signs of heat exhaustion, Ghost Team maintained their pace through the worst of the desert section. Private Ramirez spotted and neutralized 3 camouflaged drone targets while on the move, never breaking stride. Impossible, muttered Xar'Vex, reviewing the thermal imaging data. Their core temperatures should be approaching critical levels. Hour 3 saw the team transitioning to the mountain warfare zone. Lieutenant Patel took point, leading them up near vertical ascents with full gear. Sergeant Blackwood provided covering fire against automated defense turrets, her accuracy actually improving as the challenges intensified. Their endurance makes no tactical sense, Crin Tox declared, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Even Drastian shock troops require rest cycles after such exertion. By hour 6, the alien delegation watched in stunned silence as Ghost Team navigated the urban warfare zone. They moved through buildings like liquid shadow, neutralizing threats and completing objectives with machine-like efficiency. Yet these were not machines. The medical scans confirmed they were completely organic humans. Captain Dr. Xar'Vex called out, her voice trembling slightly. You need to see these readings. Their bodies are adapting. The cellular stress responses are unlike anything in our database. Instead of degrading under pressure, they're getting stronger. The observation chamber's atmosphere grew tense as the aliens witnessed something that challenged their fundamental understanding of biological limitations. Commander Thompson's voice crackled over the comm system, requesting permission to increase pace through the next section. Increase pace, Xar'Vex sputtered. They've been operating at maximum sustainable output for 6 hours. Colonel Rodriguez keyed the comm with a knowing smile. Permission granted, Ghost Team. Show our guests what you can really do. The team's response was immediate and shocking. Their movement speed increased by 30%. Accuracy metrics improved. Problem-solving time shortened. They weren't just maintaining performance, they were exceeding their initial benchmarks. This violates several known laws of xenobiology, Dr. Xar'Vex whispered, her facial tentacles writhing in scientific distress. They should be experiencing severe performance degradation. Instead, they're, what's the human phrase, getting warmed up. Xar'Vex stared at the monitors, his carefully constructed assessment of human capabilities crumbling by the minute. They had completed 12 different mission objectives, neutralized over 100 automated threats, and showed no signs of stopping. And according to the mission clock, they weren't even a quarter of the way through. Colonel Rodriguez, he said slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. Is this normal for human special forces? Rodriguez's reply sent a shiver through his exoskeleton. Oh no, Captain. This is just Thursday. You should see what they do when we actually push them. Hour 24. The alien observation team had switched to their third shift, but Ghost Team kept moving. Dr. Xar'Vex hunched over her monitoring station, facial tentacles twitching with excitement as she recorded yet another fascinating adaptation in human physiology. Captain Xar'Vex, these readings defy everything we know about organic beings, she exclaimed, gesturing at the holographic displays. Their bodies should have collapsed hours ago, yet look at these patterns. Their neural pathways are actually reconfiguring to compensate for sleep deprivation. The command center's main screen showed Ghost Team executing a complex breach and clear operation in the urban combat zone. Commander Thompson's voice came through crystal clear as he coordinated the assault. No slurring, no hesitation, just razor-sharp precision after 24 hours of continuous combat operations. Their blood chemistry is remarkable, Dr. Xar'Vex continued, practically bouncing with scientific enthusiasm. The humans call it adrenaline, but it's so much more. Their entire endocrine system works like a perfectly calibrated support network. When one system begins to flag, another kicks in to compensate. On the monitors, Lieutenant Patel cracked another impossible cryptographic challenge while Sergeant Blackwood provided covering fire. Private Ramirez had just completed his 15th successful stealth infiltration, his movements still fluid and purposeful despite the duration of the exercise. Observe their problem-solving capabilities, High Observer Crintox noted with reluctant admiration. Sleep deprivation should be causing significant cognitive deterioration, yet they continue to adapt and overcome each new challenge we introduce. Colonel Rodriguez stood at her usual spot, sipping from her third cup of coffee. You know what's really interesting? They haven't even started using their contingency stimulants yet. The entire alien delegation turned to stare at her. There are additional chemical enhancers available to them, Xar'Vex demanded. Standard issue combat stims, Rodriguez replied with a shrug. They're saving them for when things get difficult. When things get difficult, Dr. Xar'Vex's translator actually glitched trying to process that statement. You mean this is not the difficult part? A series of explosions lit up the training ground as Ghost Team breached another hardened target. Their execution was flawless, their movements synchronized with inhuman precision. Commander Thompson's voice crackled over the comm again, requesting permission to attempt a higher difficulty rating. How, Xar'Vex whispered. How are they maintaining this level of performance? Dr. Xar'Vex's medical scanners whirred as she collected more data. Their neural patterns suggest they've entered some kind of heightened state. They're not fighting their body's need for rest, they're somehow transcending it. The humans call it being in the zone. Hour 30 brought new challenges. The environmental system cycled through extreme conditions, testing the team's ability to adapt. Temperature swings, altered gravity fields, toxic atmospheric conditions. Ghost Team pushed through each obstacle with grim determination. Their secret weapon appears to be something they call spite, Dr. Xar'Vex noted, reviewing her psychological analysis. The more difficult we make the challenges, the more determined they become to succeed. It's as if adversity itself fuels their performance. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as Ghost Team tackled their 36th consecutive mission objective. Their accuracy ratings remained above 90%. Their response times stayed consistent. Even their jokes over the comm system continued, although they had taken on a distinctly punchy quality. I must revise my earlier assessments, Xar'Vex announced, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. These humans, they're not enduring the challenge. They're not just surviving it. They're starting to enjoy it. Colonel Rodriguez smiled, that unnervingly knowing smile again. You should see their faces when we tell them they need to stop early. Never met a species more offended by safety protocols. As hour 36 approached, Dr. Xar'Vex made another startling discovery. Captain, according to these readings, their bodies have begun to approach something like equilibrium. They found a sustainable pace for extended operations. Sustainable. Crintox's mandibles clicked rapidly in disbelief. You mean they could continue beyond the 48-hour mark? Rodriguez's only response was a quiet laugh that would haunt the alien delegation's reports for years to come. The command center crackled with tension as Ghost Team entered their final 12 hours. Commander Thompson's voice came through the speakers, steady and controlled. Request permission to disable safety protocols for the final phase. Colonel Rodriguez raised an eyebrow at the alien delegation. Standard procedure would be to deny that request. However, since you're here to evaluate our actual capabilities. You cannot be serious, Xar'Vex protested. Their bio readings already exceed sustainable limits for any known species. Permission granted, Ghost Team, Rodriguez announced. Show them everything. What followed would be classified as restricted data in the Galactic Archives for the next century. Commander Thompson's team exploded into action with a level of intensity that made their previous performance look like a casual warm-up. What are they doing? Dr. Xar'Vex gasped, her sensors struggling to track the rapidly changing tactical patterns. Lieutenant Patel had rigged an improvised communications array using salvaged parts from their previous missions, creating a battlefield network that somehow performed better than standard military equipment. Sergeant Blackwood demonstrated a firing technique that exploited the Coriolis effect to land shots that violated normal ballistic calculations. These tactics aren't in any of our combat databases, High Observer Crintox noted, his professional composure cracking. They're creating new solutions on the spot. Private Ramirez moved through the urban combat zone like a ghost, using the team's fatigue-induced hallucinations as inspiration for new stealth techniques. Sir, when the walls start breathing, they make excellent cover, he reported, causing several alien observers to exchange worried glances. Hour 40 brought the weather control systems online at full power. Hurricane-force winds, flash-frozen terrain, and electrical storms battered the training ground. Ghost Team adapted instantly, using the extreme conditions to their advantage. They're not just enduring the weather Xar'Vex observed in disbelief. They're weaponizing it. Commander Thompson's voice cut through the chaos. Ghost Team, execute maneuver Echo 7 Delta. The aliens watched in stunned silence as the team split into pairs, each taking a different approach to their objective. Blackwood and Ramirez created a diversionary assault that drew all automated defenses to the west. Meanwhile, Patel rigged the facility's own environmental systems to generate a localized electromagnetic pulse. "That's not possible," one of the technical observers sputtered. "The systems aren't designed to." "Human innovation," Rodriguez interrupted. "They have a gift for making things work in ways they were never intended to." As Hour 44 approached, Ghost Team began implementing strategies that seemed to defy basic military logic. They charged heavily fortified positions head-on, but with such precise timing and unconventional approaches that the defensive systems couldn't adapt. "Their tactics make no sense," Crintox complained. "Yet they're achieving unprecedented success rates." Dr. Xar'Vex's medical station was now surrounded by floating holographic displays, each showing different aspects of human physiological adaptation. "Captain, you need to see this. Their neural patterns suggest they've reached some kind of group synchronization. They're not just cooperating, they're operating as a single organism," Rodriguez finished. "We call it unit cohesion, pretty standard for human teams under sustained combat conditions." The final hours brought challenges that would have broken any other species. The facility's AI threw everything it had at Ghost Team's simultaneous multi-vector attacks, psychological warfare simulations, and environmental conditions that bordered on lethal. Commander Thompson's response? He ordered his team to accelerate. "They're using exhaustion as a tactical advantage," Xar'Vex realized, watching as Ghost Team executed maneuvers that seemed to ignore basic physics. The more tired they become, the less they worry about what's supposed to be impossible. The last hour arrived with a display of human ingenuity that would force the Galactic Council to rewrite their entire tactical database. Ghost Team combined every lesson learned over the previous 47 hours into a series of maneuvers that looked like carefully choreographed chaos. "Look at their neural patterns," Dr. Xar'Vex exclaimed. "The sleep deprivation has actually improved their creativity. They're not operating on logic anymore, they're running on spite and caffeine," Rodriguez confirmed. Hour 48 approaches. Ghost Team, status report. Commander Thompson's voice was clear and steady as he responded. "All objectives complete, Colonel. Request permission to run it again? We've got some new ideas we'd like to try." The alien delegation stared at the humans in horror. Even Colonel Rodriguez seemed surprised by that one. "Negative, Ghost Team. Return to base for standard recovery protocols." The observers watched as Ghost Team emerged from their final objective, moving with the same precision they'd shown at the start. 48 hours of continuous combat operations, and they were asking for more. "I believe," Xar'Vex said slowly, "we may need to revise our initial assessment of human military capabilities." Colonel Rodriguez just smiled. "Oh, Captain, this wasn't a military exercise. This was just Thursday practice. Want to see what we do for actual combat training?" Captain Xar'Vex stood before the Galactic Council's holographic projection, his antennae twitching with nervous energy. "Honorable Council, I must begin with a formal retraction of my preliminary assessment of species 7249, designation humans." The council chamber hummed with murmurs as Xar'Vex interfaced his neural recorder with the central display system. "The data collected during our evaluation period suggests that our understanding of human capabilities was fundamentally flawed." Dr. Xar'Vex's medical findings appeared in the air around him. What we initially classified as biological weaknesses are, in fact, extraordinary adaptations. Their lack of natural armor forces them to become more innovative. Their seemingly fragile forms mask unprecedented endurance capabilities. The recordings from Fort Resistance played, showing Ghost Team's performance over the 48-hour exercise. These humans do not simply endure hardship, they thrive on it. They possess the unique ability to improve their performance under conditions that should cause system-wide failure. Observer Crintox stepped forward, mandibles clicking in agreement. "The Council must understand we did not witness their maximum capabilities. Every test we devised, they treated as routine training. Xar'Vex's voice grew grave. My final recommendation is this Earth must be classified as a class of military power, effective immediately. Any species considering hostile action against them should be warned what we perceive as human limitations are merely their starting points. The Council's eldest member leaned forward. You suggest reclassifying them based on a single training exercise? No, Honored One. I suggest reclassifying them because this was, in their words, just a Thursday. They have similar exercises running continuously across their planet. Their entire species treats the impossible as a personal challenge. The chamber fell silent as the final footage played Commander Thompson requesting permission to run the course again. Colonel Rodriguez's parting words echoed through the council chamber. Want to see what we do for actual combat training? Let the record show. Xar'Vex concluded that humanity's greatest weapon isn't their technology or their physical capabilities. It's their sheer, relentless determination to exceed every limit we think they have. The galactic community would do well to welcome them as allies before someone makes the mistake of making them enemies. As the council session ended, Xar'Vex made one final log entry addendum to Species 7249 assessment: never tell a human something is impossible. They take it as a personal challenge, and they usually win.